So, welcome to Ekamra Sports Lit Fest. This is the only sports lit fest in India which encourages long form writing, which respects long form writing, which welcomes young and old writers of all ages. And this is the fourth edition that we are doing. The most interesting part is this is again the only sports lit fest organized here, which gives awards to good sports writers, and which is done through a jury. Today, it is my pleasure to welcome two excellent writers, Sachin Bajaj and Nishad Vaidya. They have written a book called Twice Upon a Time. This pieces together the story of 1971, the breakthrough year where India won twice overseas, and it also brought in some great names like Mr. Sunil Gavaskar, Gundappa Vishwanath, Bishan Bedi, Ajit Wadekar. It's a long list, and fans of the game know all of them very, very well. What I thoroughly enjoyed reading the book was that this is not a narrative, because we have read this narrative many times over from different perspectives, from interviews, but this has been pieced together by 71 anecdotes, 71 short pieces. It's a terrific read. It will connect the millennials who are of the Ranveer Singh and Ranveer Kapoor generation, not from people like me who are a part of the Bachchan generation. So, gentlemen, your initial thoughts. What made you piece this story together in such a nice way?
Well, I think actually the idea came from Sachin and our friend Mr. Clayton Murzello, who's the sports editor of Midday. And one day they just called me and they said, it's good. This was in late 2020, and they were like, why not do something for 1971? And we just want to do something anecdotal. Are you up for it? I said, yeah, why not? I mean, for me, obviously, I wasn't around then, but had heard a lot of stories about it from my father, my grandfather, and I thought, this will be something really nice. And with 50 years and being a proper cricket buff and cricket lover, and having seeped myself in history, I knew that there was something really, really important there. It was something that gave Indian cricket a standing. And I've been fortunate to witness an era of Indian cricket where we have a lot of confidence, we have a lot of self-belief. I've been fortunate to work with the IPL. All that you can trace back to something that happened in 1971. And I think that is something that Sachin will also agree with. Isn't that, Sachin?
Yeah. See, it's the year I was born. It's a historic year for India, whether what happened politically and with Bangladesh. And it's the year I was born. And it's the year, cricket's our religion. It's the year for an Indian supporter. 71 is a paradigm shift where I reckon we arrived on the world map. We were always there, but we arrived with a bang to go and beat a Sobers West Indies and go and beat England in England. We arrived. So it was something very, very special for us to have done, and it's something that we were very happy about. It was a happiness story. This entire project has been a very happiness project where we felt we wanted to do something to pay our humble tribute to these legends.
Sachin, while going through the anecdotes and virtually Sunil Gavaskar was one of the greatest cricketers with whom at least I have a massive connect, because I still remember the time I was on a rail journey when he hit his 10,000 runs, and what a powerful impact that had, and everything else that was around him. Of course, not to forget people like Dilip Sardesai, Gundappa Vishwanath, and the great bowlers. But I'll come to them a little later. What I thought was very, very interesting was that there are certain names like Hatia, Govindraj. Then you have someone like Jayanti Lal. These are names which have been forgotten, but which were they were a very essential part of that core, who probably never got a proper break. And there's Gigi Boy also, whose name has been mentioned. So they never made it, and this story goes on generation after generation, and they are forgotten. It's the only hoopla is around those people who make it. But it's very interesting that you have focused on them. And what was your thought process? What did you think when you were piecing their stories together?
See, there are a lot of unsung heroes in Indian cricketers who've been on the fringes, but some of them, like Saeed Hatia, who even today is a great friend of Indian cricket. He hosts all of us and a lot of our friends when we go to the UK. So I think theirs was a story that had to be told, and they have a contribution to the growth of Indian cricket in its formative years. So it is very important to talk about them. And I mean, there are a couple where I reckon we might have omitted, but that's what it is. But it's we are happy that we could put them into perspective. That for us, this book is, while it is about Gavaskar, who like even I'm from your Bachchan and Gavaskar era. For me, Gavaskar was God. When Gavaskar came to bat, we stopped doing whatever we did, and whether we were on the radio, on the television, it was all about Gavaskar. So besides the story of a Gavaskar, the story of a Hatia was very important to us. It's something very close to our heart.
Nishad?
Yeah, exactly. And I had the good fortune of talking to all of them, and we did. Like, for example, Jayanti Lal just got that one test match, and you look at, we also focused on the quirks of fate. Jayanti Lal on test debut at Jamaica, he edges a ball outside off stump, and Gary Sobers takes a screamer. He jumps to his right and he takes a screamer, and he's gone for five and never plays test cricket again. In the next test, Sunil Gavaskar bats and he edges one early in his innings, and Gary Sobers, one of the greatest fielders, drops a sitter. And then Gavaskar goes on to score 774 runs in that series, and Jayantilal never plays Test cricket again. And it was we wanted to focus on that because of what might have been for someone like a Jayantilal had he gotten another opportunity. Because what happened on both tours is that they gave Ashok Mankad the opportunity to open the batting. Even though Ashok Mankad wasn't exactly an opening batsman, he did the job in the West Indies. In England, in the test matches, he struggled, but he got all the runs in the county games. It was very important to focus on these guys. Then you had someone like a Saeed Hatia, who was considered the fastest bowler in India, but had to give up his cricketing career because he had to look after his family in England. And he continued to do that. He only came back to India later because he was considered as a probable for the 1975 World Cup. They felt he would be useful for the 50 over format. We needed to know these stories. The world needed to know these stories. Who were the men behind it? Govind Raj, another fast bowler who possibly should have gotten an opportunity, but he did not get that chance. So again, he impressed a few West Indian fast bowlers in the West Indies, yet did not get the chance to open the bowling for India. So and a lot of men behind the scenes who didn't quite get that fame, who didn't quite get the opportunity. So it was important to talk about them because they are as well fascinating stories. And later, in fact, Govindraj went to England, worked over there. At one time, he also was driving buses so that he could keep himself occupied. Then he came back to Hyderabad. So all these stories, how fate can sometimes play its role, that's also we wanted to something we highlight.
Exactly. What I find also very interesting is when you look at the composition of the 1971 team, there is not a single genuine quick who played. You had you yourself mentioned the fact that Abid Ali and Solkar would open the bowling. Later on, Mr. Gavaskar would bowl a couple of overs, which was such fun and games for him. But the genesis of the spin quartet was set by Tiger Pataudi, which was taken to at another level, maybe utilized by Ajit Wadekar in these twin series, but not a single genuine quick, and yet that magic happened.
Not a genuine quick, and possibly Govindraj was one who was on the quicker side but not given the opportunity, and that was the mindset of Indian cricket at the time. A few years later, there was a fast bowler called Pandurang Sargaonkar, and he was genuinely quick. He never got the opportunity to play for India. India just focused on those quick bowlers and on those spin bowlers, sorry, and those spin bowlers did the trick. I mean, you look at what happened even in the West Indies. The main breakthroughs were given by Salim Durrani in the test match at Trinidad when India won. He got Lloyd and Sobers in no time, and that turned the tide in India's favor. Go to England, and it was Chandrasekhar at the Oval who did the job for India. So that focus was on the spinners, and it's quite surprising. Today's generation will look at the likes of the Bumrah, Shamis, and think that India have genuine quick bowlers. But we know what it was when we were yearning for that fast bowler. You guys had Kapil Dev for the longest time who gave you that hope. My generation, we grew up with Javagal Srinath, Zahir Khan. But now looking at that crop, it's scarcely believable that at one point India didn't have them, isn't it?
I
Sachin,
mean, it's
yes,
very
please go
interesting.
ahead.
I'll just come in here quickly to think Karsan Ghavri, he was quick. He was a good bowler, but he also doubled up as a spinner. So he was, I reckon, post Pandurang Salgaonkar, our first genuine quick bowler, he and Madan Lal. And I remember former West Indies cricketer described Madan Lal as the fastest off spinner. That's where Indian fast bowling was at, and Ghabri, who was then our quickest before Kapil Dev came, also bowled left arm spin. So it's very interesting to see how we've evolved from a spinning nation where we are having to becoming a fast bowling notion where we play three or four quicks, and whether it's Jadeja, Ashwin, and all, they are all fighting for one spin placed in most of our away test matches. So it's been a theory, or it's been an evolution from a spin, what I call the spin economy of cricket, to the fast bowling economy.
I'm also intrigued by the fact that how did you uh, piece those 71 anecdotes together? I'm sure that there would have been many more. So, what was your thinking process? How did the sifting happen, and what were the timelines that you had at your disposal?
See, it's very simple. Timelines were ours because when we self-publish a book, we are not we don't have a sword hanging over our head, or no one is there to tell us put this, don't put this, or that kind of stuff. So we were very relaxed in our timelines. We did it in a couple of months, but a major part of the research was undertaken by Nishad and with Clayton Marzello of Midday, who was not only a friend of mine, he's also Nishad's mentor, but who has been a guiding light for us right through this project here. He's been fantastic. He's helped us with a lot of the anecdotes, and he's given Nishad and me a method to our madness.
And what we actually did was we first wrote down what we knew, the incidents that we could remember. So you always start about with the things that you know. So I remember when we made our initial list, there were around 25 or 26 anecdotes. So you dish out the obvious ones, like for example, Durrani taking the ball and getting Sobers and Lloyd in quick succession, or you go for a couple that you must have seen in Sunny Days, where or even Idols, where it was Ashok Mankad being a little humorous about his own form, or you speak about or you talk about Dilip Sardesai and the fact that he took on the bowling. So stuff like that you picked out. Jayanti Lal missing out on Test debut. We had a list of 26. Then Mr. Muzello, luckily we got access to the wealth of his collection of books and of old periodicals, and it was fascinating because we got books from 1971 written by Mr. Sundar Rajan, and we got illustrated weeklies of India and a few other books, a few other autobiographies which aren't readily available today. So piecing that all together was easier. But then, having said that, our list went up to nearly 95, and then we had to cut it down because we merged a couple. Then we found that a few of them didn't quite add up, and they were just urban legends. And it's really difficult to bust those myths because you do not have that access, but access to those people. And in the sense that some of them may be old, their memories may not be all that very strong, but there were certain stories that we really had to bust, and it was done by way of looking at scorecards. So, for example, one of the major stories from that time was that India, in a tour game, decided to get decided to struggle to Jack Norega so that he plays the test match, and they do not, so that Lance Gibbs, they play him well, so that West Indies do not play Lance Gibbs, but in fact the two of them never played a tour game together on that match. On that tour, they played two separate tour games, although they played a test match together, which was the Guyanese test match. So these are the kind of things that we had to be on the lookout for, and to ensure that each story added up with the scorecards and the other factual details.
I'm very glad that Clayton Nozello is your mentor and he was associated with this book. He's a highly respected name, and it obviously his imprint is also there in some way or the other in this book. I want to hit upon Ajit Wadekar. Now, here is a man who got a break, a difficult break, that too taking over from the extremely charming, effervescent Tiger Pataudi, who did things his way, and his stories are legendary. And of course, one of his greatest, one of the players he mentored was ML Jaisima, another hero kind of figure who probably never excelled, or maybe the correct phraseology is that he didn't achieve what he could have, but he left his imprint. But I want to basically talk about Wadekar, that he takes on a team, and you've there are a couple of anecdotes which you have woven in, which talk about some of the tactics, the strategy that he employed, like calling Gavaskar and Vishwanath probably a little later into the team meeting, so that he could sort of yell at them, which was fake, but it sent a right signal uh, to the seniors, which just showed how important it was to form a team. But when you look at the 74 series, which is obviously not the scope of the book, he was judged very harshly. His career got truncated. He never got his due later. What do you think about Wadekar, the figure, the captain, and the way he was treated?
I'll get on to this one straight away. I've known Vadekar personally from my younger days, because he used to be a great friend with Mr. Raj Singh Dungarpur, who was the president of the Cricket Club of India, and he used to be regularly at the club. See, Vadekar played for Shivaji Park Gymkhana, and we had two teams in Bombay then who would beat most Ranji Trophy sides in India. I mean, a Shivaji Park Gymkhana or a Dadar Union team would smash the hell out of Delhi. No question about it. They were that strong. They were the two best sides in India. If you ask me, the best side in India was Bombay, followed by Dadar Union and Shivaji Park Gymkhana, who were equal. Their rivalry was very good. They played some really tough cricket. So Wadekar came from a very tough school. He was captain of Shivaji Park Gymkhana. Gavaskar played for Dadar Union, where V.S. Patil was the captain, and their rivalries were strong and intense. But when they got together for Bombay, it was Bombay. When they got together for India, it was India, because we had about, in that era, we had at any given time 5 to 6 players in the playing 11 who were from Bombay, whether it was Solkar, who was there was Sardesai, there was Wadekar, there was Gavaskar. It was this old Bombay school of cricket. So Wadekar came from a very tough school of cricket. He led India. He fitted into some very big shoes of Pataudi. Very admirably led India. Was treated very harshly, but that was the nature of the Indian game at that time. And there were pushes and pulls, as they always are in all things in life, not only in India. I remember Lord Harris, who used to be the governor of Bombay, always told Douglas Jardine, who he mentored as a captain, there are more games played off the field than on it. So I guess you could put this into that category. And he was never given the recognition, but in Bombay, Wadekar was always given the recognition, whether he came to CCI, MCA. He nearly became an MCA president also, but they served Bombay cricket. Whether I think he played for State Bank. They played till their latter years. They mentored players. Wadekar was a very successful manager stroke coach of the Indian team. In those days, he doubled up a role. So he contributed massively to Indian cricket. And for us, Wadekar will always be Wadekar.
Exactly. We are also very aware of the politics involved in cricket, and like you very rightly said, that there are a lot of games which happen off the field, which might be more important than what eventually happens on the field. And that story has continued. The way captains have been shabbily treated, not everyone has got a good deal. But I want to hear, want to get your opinion on Sunil Gavaskar, because over and above the legendary batsman, the way he has ensured his longevity as a commentator, as part of the circuit, does that boil down to people skills, communication, PR, or what is it?
Good
I think it's
old-fashioned
boiled.
honesty.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it is. It's good old-fashioned honesty, integrity, very strong values that the Gavaskar stroke Mantri household has always had. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to know them from a very young age and have grown up in that school of thought. It's the values. It's the honesty with which you portray yourself. It's the integrity, and not to forget the cricketing acumen and knowledge. If Gavaskar, if there was one thing more than the Britannica encyclopedia on cricket, it's the Sunil Gavaskar thought process on cricket. He's at a level of his own in as far as acumen and cricketing knowledge and experience. See what he's done for Indian cricket. So all this combined with the values he portrays, and his brutal honesty, he's a very honest man, comes out very well, and that's what has ensured his being there for so long and respected for so long. He was chairman of ICC's cricket committee for the longest time. He's had every position for the asking in world cricket, and he's done is serve the country.
Right, Nishad, you were saying something.
Yeah, I think we just lost him. Yeah, so I was just saying that it's mainly because of the way he's learned to evolve at times, and just stay relevant if you learn to evolve at times, which is why an Amitabh Bachchan even today is relevant. He was the angry young man back in the 1970s,
Right.
and yeah, and then he comes back and reinvents himself in the 2000s. So Sunil Gavaskar never stopped evolving himself with times. He continued to keep himself relevant, and I think the biggest example I can give you is, I had the good fortune of working with him after spending years on the industry. Interacted with him a few times, but only got to work with him a couple of years ago. And what stood out for me was the fact that he could talk to everyone, be it young or old, and talk to them according to what interests them. And that comes from a place of having good, obviously, people skills, but also the knowledge and awareness of what you are, and to keep yourself updated with the times. And I think that's really amazing. And look at him today, even though he is 70 plus, he barely looks 70 plus. He's kept himself fit, he's
Exactly.
kept himself relevant. And I think it's a big lesson for us as well, to, even after your glory days of a sports person, how he's managed to uh, stay relevant is the word. And I use that word again and again because he's continued to be respected, he's continued to be remembered, and because he's known how to evolve at times. Last year he joined Instagram. He doesn't need to, but he did. It's because only someone like a Gavaskar knows the importance of staying up to date with the times. And I think that is a big lesson for a lot of us, because as we move forward, for us it's going to get tougher because technology is going to move even faster, and we can take a page out of his book and
Exactly.
learn what to do. Yeah.
I want to
Yes.
add two anecdotes here. One is relating to Mr. Gavaskar's father, Mr. Manohar Gavaskar, who we all affectionately called Baba. He, towards his latter years, he used to live in Pune, and they had a sports business called Sunny Sports. And Mr. Gavaskar was very disciplined. Uh, he'd be the first one into that shop at about 9 o'clock in the morning, and open up and wait for the others to come. And memory was very sharp, and the values were so strong. I'd once gone there, and his grandson, Rohan Gavaskar, used to play at the CCI, and Rohan used to enjoy the odd chocolate pastry at the club. So, one of the times that I went into Sunny Sports, because I used to go to Raju Mehta to record cricket video cassettes in those days, one of the first things he asked me was, "So, are you busy feeding Rohan chocolate pastries at the CCI?" Which I'll never forget. He was on top of everything. Yeah. He was just remarkable. He was very sharp. He was very intelligent, and values are very strong. The other the other incident I think has been documented well in sunny days when Mr. Gavaskar, that's Mr. Sunil Gavaskar, went to Madhav Mantri's house and he saw all the India caps and sweaters. And I remember he had mentioned in his book that he said Mr. Mantri had told him, "These are caps you don't get to wear. You need to earn these." So these are
Exactly.
two striking incidents that always come back to me, which tells you the values of their family and the basis on which created what the legend that is Mr. Sunil Gavaskar.
In that book, there is mention of the role played by Vijay Merchant. And in the early 80s, I did have the good fortune of meeting Mr. Vijay Merchant a couple of times in Bombay, and we spoke about cricket. But coming to this book, there is a very specific anecdote that you have put in where Vijay Merchant almost treated Sunil Gavaskar, a young man, 21 years old, who has never played international cricket, with so much reverence. He gave him that respect. And this wasn't just uh, basically doing PR work for Sunil Gavaskar. He must have, one great player senses something in another great player, like Sunil Gavaskar sensed about Sachin Tendulkar, who of course went on to do his bit for Indian cricket. But going into that bit, what do you think would have made someone like Vijay Merchant A praise Sunil Gavaskar so much, and B, uh, Sunil himself, like 700 plus runs on that tour, was phenomenal.
See, Vijay Merchant saw something in Gavaskar. Vijay Merchant was our greatest opening batsman of the previous era. Didn't played only 10 Test matches, but played a lot of cricket. He was the president of CCI also, and he was a very sharp man. He saw something in Gavaskar. Maybe he saw something of himself in him, but for to get Vijay Merchant's eye and to get his praise, you have to be someone special. He saw something. Maybe it was his gut feeling. Who knows? But that was Vijay Merchant for you.
And the fact that, when the team was departing for the West Indies, he said that this young man, will do well. And he points that, you all should look at him. And that, coming from a chairman of selectors and was the patriarch of Indian batting at the time, it really meant a lot. But when we were doing our research, we also found that he had told Rusi Modi, one of his old cricketing mates back in the day, he had told him way back in 1969-70 that this young boy is someone we should watch out for. And back then, Sunil Gavaskar was just breaking into the Ranji Trophy side, hadn't got the big amount of runs. He was consistent, but not the mountain of runs that people thought he had at the time. But Gavaskar was definitely identified by Merchant way back that, this is one that we have to watch out for the future. And that takes remarkable eye for talent. And, in fact, Gavaskar had made it to the Ranji side, Mumbai side back in 67, 68, around that time, had failed. And many had, questioned that why he has been picked so early. And Madhav Mantri was also around. A few suspected, it's because his uncle is around. But the fact that, his talent was never in doubt for the establishment, it comes from the fact that someone like a Merchant had really believed in it.
The book speaks about wins, the twin series wins overseas against England, against West Indies. According to you both, which was the bigger victory?
I think both. It's very. That's why it's called Twice Upon a Time. I think both were important here. To go on that kind of a role in Indian cricket then was unheard of. Here. Two away series wins back to back. It's just phenomenal. So you can't really compare which was greater, which was not greater. I think they were both very important. So I mean, there I can't pick one which was more important. I think both were very important.
Nishad, you agree with Sachin?
I would agree with him because the West Indies series, in a way, again, it came at a time when no one expected India to win. And fine, West Indies were a team in transition, didn't have those great fast bowlers. Their batting greats were yet to come, like the likes of the Greenidges, the Vivian Richards were still a few years away. And it was an aging unit, maybe a few others in transition. So, but the fact that India could go to the West Indies, where they had never won a test match, there was those horrendous memories of Nari Contractor getting hit in 1962. To keep all that away, it was a mindset shift, which is why West Indies is important. I think they're significant in their own ways. You go to England, and if you actually read all the reports, because India won in the West Indies, there was still a little bit of cautious optimism going into England. They didn't go as no hopers. They went in with cautious optimism, and that cautious optimism then translated into a victory, and that was big because you ultimately beat England, a country that was ruling over you only 24 years earlier. And I think that is why that one was big in that sense. And England were the number one side at the time because they had beaten Australia and won the Ashes. So it wasn't easy. So in their own ways, they mean a lot to Indian cricket.
Exactly. I couldn't help chuckling reading the foreword by a certain Sir Clive Lloyd, who is so
Yes.
sweet, who is so full of admiration for the Indian team. But one can't forget 75, the Port of Spain test, which India won so brilliantly, possibly one of the greatest chase in cricket history where India is concerned, 400 plus. And after the decimation of their three spinners, Padmore, Imtiaz Ali, and there was a third gentleman, then you talk about how he galvanized the whole the spin quartet into a pace quartet, and you have Holding, Garner, Roberts, all of them coming in, Marshall later, and the decimation of team after team. So, any thoughts on Clive Lloyd and how the evolution happened?
Sachin, would you like
See,
to go first? Yeah.
yeah. See, I'll tell you something. It all started, the evolution of this West Indies team. They started with the rebuild with the Sobers era finishing, and Lloyd using fast bowling as a weapon. They lost a series to Chappell's Australians 4-1 or 5-1, I'm not sure. And that's when Lloyd realized he had to use fast bowling as a weapon. And West Indies he encouraged them to bowl quick, he encouraged them to bounce. He led very well. And I think there's that very famous documentary, the Babylon one, which is a
Yes.
must watch, which tells you how that whole process evolved. It was about pride. It was about proving a point, and that's how he basically galvanized 4 to 7 fast bowlers into a unit, into what like a war machine. So whether it was Holding Garner, Marshall Roberts, or Marshall came in towards the mid bit of it, and people like Wayne Daniels, who were quick, Winston Davis. Forget that they couldn't get into the West Indies team over a sustained period, and Sylvester Clarke. It's only
Yes.
because the Packer series happened.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys went away, and then these Marshall got his chance in India, and Sylvester Clarke came to India. It's only then that the others got a chance. So there was talent which Lloyd and West Indies cricket harnessed into a war machine, and it helped them that they had the batsmen. I mean, who'd put the runs up, like whether it was Greenwich or Richards or Haynes or Lloyd himself or someone like a Larry Gomes, someone like a Fought Backus got 250 in a test match, couldn't get into the West Indies team. And it was nearly impossible to score off those West Indies fast bowlers. It's only Mr. Gavaskar who's got 1300s against the West Indies, who really broke the code of how to play them. And it was just his talent, his tenacity, his acumen, and to the later era, Alan Border, who could, tackle them to a certain extent consistently. So it was something special that Lloyd done, and everyone speaks of Bradman's Invincibles, but you can't compare teams from different eras. It's unfair, but I think Lloyd has his own standing as to what kind of a success rate, what kind of a war machine he created.
And I think
Nishad,
the
closing
West Indies,
comments? Yeah.
yeah, and I think it really signifies the kind of leader he was with Clive Lloyd. It's not easy leading the West Indies because people have to understand they are different countries. All of them, they have their different cultures, they have their different practices, and on top of it, they've got different races as well because you've got people of African origin, you've got people of Indian origin, so there are different undercurrents over there. Yet to overcome all that and to make a united team with which actually sustained excellence over a long period of time. I think that is what really signifies Clive Lloyd as a leader. He gave them a purpose, he gave them a direction, and united them with that purpose and direction. Otherwise, it's not easy getting all those different groups together, which is why I think Clive Lloyd, more than a cricketing sense, it is this that makes him a greater leader in the sense that he got all these different people together with the one goal of making West Indies the number one side in the world. And it all started obviously with the 74-75 series where he was leading West Indies in India. And then when it was a great series, locked at 2-2, and he's written about it in his foreword that it was locked at 2-2 and heading into the last test at Wankhede, he gets that double century, which was his highest score. And West Indies beat India to win the series 3-2. And thereafter, I mean, they never looked back. And that series that Sachin spoke about in Australia, it was a wake up call. And that run chase by India at Port of Spain in 76, where India chased down 406 in the last innings, that sort of hit them like this and told Clive Lloyd that, you've got to make a change. And it
Right.
started with the next game.
Well, I could go on and on for a couple of hours listening to both of you, but we'll have to do an end wrap here. I would like to say that I thoroughly enjoyed reading this book, and this is a terrific way to also reach out to millennials, people who've never seen these players on the field, may catch their footage on YouTube or wherever they can. But why were they great? What was the turning point in a sport that is so popular? This is a terrific move. These 71 anecdotes, I would heavily recommend everyone to have a go at it. It's easy, it's very simple, it is delightfully simple, and the anecdotes really stick to your mind. You wonder, and this is what we try to do in this discussion: try and connect the discussion, create those threads for the future. Sachin Bajaj, Nishad, thank you so much for joining me on this chat, and I wish you all the very best with your book and in future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you for having us here. It's an honor to be a part of you guys. And I mean, I'm the chairman of cricket at the Cricket Club of India. At some days, we'd love to host your festival at the Brabant Stadium here.
That would be terrific. Look forward to that.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you. Goodbye.